I make the point that the agitation for our Jewish homeland had taken a political tone towards the end of the 19th century. This coincided with the weakening of the powers of the Ottoman Empire. At the time, the Ottoman Empire controlled the Middle East and a large swath of territories in Europe and Africa. The heart of the Ottoman Empire is the country presently known as Turkey. The Ottoman Empire was like a Soviet Union that also collapsed. It controlled countries today known as Saudi Arabia, Iran, the Arab world, and some parts of Europe were under the Ottoman Empire. An 1896 strongly worded statement from the Austrian Jewish journalist Theodor Herzl was a fierce statement about the mission of Zionist forces to create a state for themselves. The Zionists are also Jewish, so I can call them Zionist forces or Jewish forces. Let's look at the statement that gave birth to the state of Israel. You know, sometimes don't underrate the power of words. When this journalist called Theodor Herzl made this statement, it later gave life to the state of Israel like we have it today. So let's look at the statement he made. He says, I do not intend to arouse sympathetic emotions on our behalf. That would be foolish, futile, and undignified proceeding. I shall content myself with putting the following questions to the Jews. So he starts. Is it not true that in countries where we live in perceptible manners, the position of Jewish lawyers, doctors, technicians, teachers, and employees of all descriptions becomes daily more intolerable? Is it not true that the Jewish middle classes are seriously threatened? You can see, Jews were threatened in Europe. Jews were innovative. In Germany, why did Hitler go for them? They were innovative. They were good in business. They were good in science. So they were rich. And others were jealous of them. They were attacked. They have been endangered species. And when Herzl could not take it anymore, he began to campaign, asking Jews, for how long are we going to continue to take this? Perhaps Theodor knew that something like the Holocaust was coming. I think the Holocaust was the last straw for the Jews. In that statement, he makes the point, is it not true that the passions of the mob are incited against our wealthy people? Is it not true that our poor endure greater sufferings than any other poor? He makes the point that this kind of pressure is being felt everywhere by Jews. he now makes the point. Are we going to get out of these countries now? And where do we go to? He asked the questions. May we yet remain? And how long? Theodor says, let the sovereignty be granted us over a portion of the globe large enough to satisfy the rightful requirement of a nation. The rest we shall manage for ourselves. At the moment, I'm analyzing the words of Theodor Herzl. He was the one who openly called for the creation of a state for Jews in 1896. In that statement, he says the creation of a new state is neither ridiculous nor impossible. We have in our day witnessed the process in connection with nations, he says. How did Palestine then become the choice for the creation of the state of Israel? The choice of Palestine as a homeland for the Jews created a problem of immense complexity owing to the refusal of the Arabs to accept a Jewish state in what they call their land. Inspired by Western nationalism, thousands of Jews in Europe began to migrate to Palestine to join their fellow Jews who were minority at the time in Palestine. There were Jews in Palestine before the call by hands for others to join. So who owns Palestine? Just ponder on that. I don't intend to answer that question here. By 1914, when World War I started, a sizable number of Jews had migrated to Palestine. The defeat of the Ottoman Empire, already in the horizon by 1917, put Britain at the helm of Palestinian affairs. Can you see? The Ottoman Empire was in charge of the Arab world. When the Ottoman Empire collapsed, it was the rise of Britain in that zone. And Britain, at the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, took charge of Palestine. British forces under General Sir Edmund Allenby defeated the Turks and captured Jerusalem on the 9th of December, 1917. That was towards the end of World War II, of World War I. The Ottoman Empire collapsed in the middle of World War I, and it led to the rise of European powers. In 1922, the League of Nations officially granted Britain the mandate to govern Palestine. There was the League of Nations before the United Nations. It was the reform of the League of Nations that gave birth to the United Nations. Yes, there was this super speech. I want you to see the picture of Winston Churchill. Ayo, can we see the picture of that former British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill? Because I want to talk about him. There's this biography of Winston Churchill. I thought I was going to bring it here. If you are a lover of politics, I implore you to read books. I implore you to read books. Some part of what I am talking about today were part of my BSc thesis when I studied politics and international relations at the BSc level. Because I've always loved international affairs. So I looked at the Middle East. I've always been interested in the Middle East. So part of what I'm reading today, I extracted from my thesis during my BSc days studying politics and international relations. And when I was looking at it again, I said, okay, perhaps I need to publish that thesis now as a book. Because most of the predictions I made there years ago are reflecting today. I'm wondering, why haven't I published this as a book? Anyway, my books will start coming out soon. It's because I've been recommending other books, but you should also begin to read me soon and critique me too. Don't forget the book of the day, Clash of Civilization. That's the book of the day. I will tell you about it. So Winston Churchill. In 1922, the League of Nations officially granted Britain the mandate to govern Palestine. Winston Churchill's 1921 speech that Zionism was also good for the Arabs who lived in Palestine hit at the core of Arab pride. Are you getting the point? When Winston Churchill went to Jerusalem to make that speech in 1921, he advised the Arabs in Palestine to consider Jewish consciousness. There is something positive in it. You know, calling on Arabs to share in the benefits and progress of Zionism was a rhetorical way of pushing aside Arab consciousness. Did they see it coming? You know, the last scholar was saying Israel was planted there. Planted. Okay, let's continue to see. Churchill's speech supported the equitable division of Palestine and its resources to the Jews and Arabs to fulfill their nationalism. The Churchill was saying we can divide the resources and land among the Jews and the Arabs living in Palestine. A critical analysis of Winston Churchill's 1921 speech in Jerusalem at the Hebrew University was a revelation of Britain's more concern for a prosperous Jewish state. According to Churchill, the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine will be a blessing to the world. Is Churchill right? Look at the word. He said, I'm quoting him now. The establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine will be a blessing to the world. So is it a blessing to the world? He made that statement in 1921. Statements like these coming from British politicians few years after the country reneged on the Hussein-McMahon Agreement instigated Arab public opinion against Western influence in the Middle East. I don't know if you've read about the Hussein-McMahon Agreement that Britain reneged on in the Middle East. Look at this book. The Supreme Commander, The War Years of Dwight Eisenhower. The Supreme Commander. Have you read this book? I recommend this book to you. You will find this book on udarabooks.com. And you can also buy it through this line. The number pinned to this post, you can buy it on that line. You can buy it. That is Udara Books' WhatsApp number. It's also the studio line. So if you are interested in this work, this tells you about World War II and the general that led the war. And after the war, this general became the president of America. He resigned from the army and became the president of the United States of America. So America has also been governed by a general. Like Buhari was a general in the army. Aiken Sehua was a general. The supreme commander. That was how he was addressed during World War II. It's a very interesting book. So you'll find it on udarabooks.com. What did he say? Ambrose brings Eisenhower's experience of the Second World War to life in this book, showing in vivid detail how the general's skill as a diplomat and military strategist contributed to Allied successes in North Africa, in Europe, and established him as one of the greatest military leaders in the world. The author of the book is Stephen Ambrose, the Supreme Commander. All these are old books. You can hardly find them. I just brought them out from the archives. I know we have just 3 copies of this because it has been in the archives. They are not new books. They are old books. You can hardly find them. So you can find them on udarabooks.com.